Hey, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for your patience. Something came up with a friend, and I was detained a lot longer than I intended to be or planned to be. But here I am, glad to be here with all of you. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell. We will start our late night stream a little bit later than we thought, but we're still here. Thanks everybody. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell, and we will do this.
The American century. I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is just a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
Welcome, everybody. So glad to be here with all of you. It's been a busy couple days for me, but here I am. I was following around the Russian foreign minister at the United Nations, which was a great opportunity, because I've always looked up to Sergei Lavrov. I've always thought he was a really skilled, effective statesman, and the amount of pressure that he's under, as the United States mobilizes the world against Russia right now, it's kind of amazing what he's achieved. And part of the reason that I kind of had to step up to the plate was they blocked the visas of the usual press pool that travels with him. So I had to spend some time with the Russian foreign minister, but it was really an honor. I got to ask him a question at his press conference. I got to cover the UN Security Council meetings where he spoke. That was really, really a pleasure. And, I understand he's on his way back to Russia at this point, but he was here for a couple days. There you go. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell. Now, the way we generally do things on these streams, for those of you who may not be familiar, the way we generally do things is I do the roll call, where I call you all out as I see you, names and locations. I do that after my opening remarks. So I'm going to give some opening remarks tonight. I'll give my opening remarks, and then after that, we'll do the roll call. And then after that, I answer super chat questions for the rest of the night. So if you have something you want me to talk about in the second half of the program, by all means, send me a super chat. I would appreciate it, and I can then answer that question in the second half of our program. So send me a super chat. I will write it down. And that's what makes the second half of the show exciting. And we might be on here all night. If you keep asking good questions, we might be on here all night. So just keep the super chats rolling in, and I'll answer your questions. There you go. So the first thing I wanted to talk about tonight is this amazing intervention that Jose just did. Jose is one of the young activists with the LaRouche organization. He's about the same age as me, maybe a little bit younger, maybe a little bit older. I actually don't know what his age is, but Jose, today he confronted the editor of the New York Times, the editor of the Washington Post, these mainstream media outlets that have been covering up, just completely covering up for the U.S. imperialists and their crimes, completely ignoring the real suppression of freedom of speech and civil liberties in the United States right now, the crackdown on Julian Assange and the Uhuru movement, the suppression of Seymour Hersh's heroic journalism. All right. And so, yeah, it was pretty powerful intervention. Let's watch Jose.
Is this the lecture hall with Seymour Hersh? I'm looking for the one with Seymour Hersh because it's a policy and press hall event. So shouldn't we be talking about the Nord Stream since that's the biggest story of the century? And you guys, you know, I mean, you have the executive editor of the New York Times there who came out with a phony story to try and block Seymour Hersh. It's just kind of funny how that happened, you know? I mean, did you even acknowledge Seymour Hersh? All of you are executive editors of papers that broke Pentagon, My Lai, Watergate. Is this the same papers or not? I mean, is there anything you've gotten right in the last 20 years, or am I mistaken about that? I mean, it's just kind of funny because Iraq, wrong. Syria, wrong. Russiagate, really wrong. Okay, I mean, the list goes on and on. So the last thing you could do to try and actually fix your reputation is acknowledge that through leaks, we had to find out that Zelensky was going to bomb Moscow on the anniversary. I mean, if you're so impartial, shouldn't you at least say, right, that Zelensky was going to bring us on the verge of World War III? That seems pretty fair. While Julian Assange rots in prison, all of you've got, you know, fat checks because he's in jail for doing your job. And you know what? Tucker Carlson ain't no Seymour Hersh, but he did something you guys are scared to do. Speak the truth and actually be critical of the war, which is why he was actually fired from Fox, because you are all cowards. Every single one of you. None of you have actually had any relevancy. And you know what? The mainstream press is now dying. Nobody's ever going to listen to you again. You have no credibility with the public. The only people who care about what you have to say are elite assholes who have nothing productive to say anymore. And it's dying off. So will you at least say something, either about Nord Stream or Ukraine or the fact that Zelensky brought us to the verge of World War III and the only reason we knew about that was through leaks? Go ahead. It's a free speech event, right? You guys are the press. Let's say something here. Mr. Khan, come on. You know, you're the executive editor of the New York Times, you know. I'm just trying to get into some good trouble here, man. Woo. Listen, Karen, get out of my face for a second. I got to talk to these gentlemen. Okay. Well, I just want to hear what they have to say. Go ahead. I'm done.
Wait your turn. Wait your turn.
You know what I'm telling to you. Come.
Wait your turn.
You could project if we can't.
I would just say I think it's important to hear everybody's point of view.
Yeah.
So thank you.
All right.
I do think that we need to give our moderator a chance to ask other questions.
We're on the verge of World War III.
Some of the people in the audience also do so. Thank
Let's
you.
go.
Really, thank you.
Say something about this bombing. We blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. Listen, don't stand there while there are people rotting in prison. Nobody said anything about Uhuru, right? The socialists who are in jail for being critical of this war. God damn it.
Let's go.
At least say something about the people in jail for being critical of this war. They don't deserve to be in prison right now.
Yeah. Wow. You know, Jose is very good. That's Jose Vega, by the way. He's very good at doing interventions, but this one takes the cake. I mean, he kept going. He just kept going. He kept confronting them. Talked about Nord Stream. Talked about Uhuru, talked about the Seymour Hersh revelations and Zelensky leaks. I mean, this is really a great intervention. He touched on all the issues, talked about freedom of the press, and wow, that was epic. And more people need to do interventions like this. More people need to do them because we are in a dangerous spot as a country right now. We're in a really dangerous spot. And I mean, it's really, really, really great that he did what he did. And we need more people doing stuff like this. We need more people to see it because everybody can see what's going on, but yet our leaders just continue. They just continue their ruthless path toward a low-wage police state and World War III. And people need to call them out. People need to make it harder for them to continue on the death march that they are on. You know, so there you go. There you go. Good times. I don't know who that is. And, you know, but I can say something about that. I don't know who that is, though. So there you go. Yeah, if someone wants to tell me who that is, I don't even know who that is. And if that's Sundiata, somebody or something, I don't know. I mean, somebody said something. People are always talking shit about me. But anyway, today at the United Nations, I was able to ask, as many people have probably already seen on Twitter, I was able to, you know, attend the UN daily press briefing with Stefan Dujarric, who is the spokesperson for the UN Secretary General. And I was actually able to ask him about the Uhuru indictments. So there you go.
4 activists associated with the People's Democratic Uhuru Movement and the African People's Socialist Party have been indicted by the U.S. Department of Justice. This is an organization that's been involved in running farmers markets, providing services in the American black community, protesting police brutality, Black Lives Matter. The indictment from the U.S. Department of Justice accuses them of spreading Russian propaganda and cites simply some web conferences that they had, some Zoom meetings, some emails they sent out, as well as the fact that they have run routine election campaigns. Is this of concern to the Secretary General as an attack on human rights, freedom of assembly, et cetera?
I frankly was not aware of the case before you mentioned it. Let me look into it, and I will get back to you.
Yeah. Now, before I play the rest of it, I did ask him about another issue, and we'll play the rest of it. I said Black Lives Matter in there very strategically because it would be very hard for people to dismiss it, right? Because the way these people are brainwashed to think, they just hear, oh, Russian propaganda. Oh, they must be bad. If they're tied to Russia, they deserve it somehow. But all those same liberal people that have been trained to just dismiss Russia have all been trained, if they hear anything Black Lives Matter, they go, oh, I care about that. They have to pretend they're interested. So I threw the phrase Black Lives Matter in there I mean, they have protested police brutality for decades longer than Black Lives Matter has. But I threw the phrase Black Lives Matter in there because that would jerk the liberals awake. It's a trigger phrase, basically. These liberals have been brainwashed that whenever they hear Black Lives Matter, they have to pretend they agree. And these liberals, they've been brainwashed that whenever they hear Russia, they have to support, killing the person, locking them up, or, never listen to the person. But they've also been trained that whenever they hear the phrase Black Lives Matter, they have to go, oh, I agree with that, no matter what it is. So I threw the phrase Black Lives Matter in there. I found a way to fit it in there because they have protested police brutality, and they were part of the big protests among the black community around that. I threw that in there to make them all listen and not just dismiss what I was saying immediately. And I feel like I got a much politer response, and I got much more interest from the liberal mainstream reporters in the room because I did that. Before I said the Russia part, I said the Black Lives Matter part, and that threw them off, right? And you have to be strategic like that sometimes. But then I asked another question, and we'll show that.
I also would like to ask about, in light of the fact that the Russian foreign minister was unable to have the journalists that generally accompany him come, is there any talk about whether or not the United States should continue to host the United Nations as it continues to interfere with routine activities of the United Nations in this manner?
The issue of where the UN is seated, where it holds its meetings, is a decision for member states themselves to take.
All right. And so, yeah, should the U.S. be continuing to host the United Nations if they're going to do things like block the visas of the press team that accompanies the Russian foreign minister? Russia is a permanent member of the Security Council, right? It's one of the most important countries at the UN. There are permanent members of the UN Security Council, the countries that won World War II, basically. So they are, the countries that have real sway at the United Nations, but yet even one of them, Russia, was blocked from sending, reporters to accompany the foreign minister. So I think that was, should the USA, if it's going to continue to do this, they've done this before, and I've covered this when I've covered the UN all the time. The USA has signed a treaty that says they are obligated to allow the UN to do UN business. They will not impede UN business. But the USA loves to impede UN business, and they do it all the time, right? For example, I remember after the Iran nuclear deal, the Iranian government appointed a new UN ambassador, and his name was Hamid Abu Talibi. And he was going to be the UN ambassador representing the Islamic Republic of Iran. And the USA said, no, you can't have this guy. We think he might be a terrorist. We think he might be a threat because he may have been involved in the Iranian hostage-taking crisis back in the 70s, so you can't have him. And they blocked him from going, and so Iran actually had to pick another ambassador. Then they replaced him with Gholameh Khoshroo. And I remember that. But it was just like, Iran doesn't have the right to pick its own UN ambassador. Also, you will recall that it was revealed by Edward Snowden that the United States has been spying on UN missions, that they have been engaging in wiretapping and surveillance of countries' UN missions. Well, those UN missions are supposed to be, that's, like a part of another country. They're supposed to be private. They're supposed to be protected. But it's understood that the communications of all the UN missions have been routinely monitored by the American government. That there's a building in Lower Manhattan, the AT&T building with no windows. It's this skyscraper with no windows. You can't see it at night. And that from there, they were monitoring all the emails, all the phone calls going in and out of UN missions. Completely in violation of the treaty. And that completely gives the USA an upper hand in international relations, right? If you're reading the communications of the UN mission of every country in the world, that puts you way ahead in international relations. But the USA gets away with it. And now the latest, they blocked the press pool of the Russian foreign minister. He didn't get to bring his journalists with him. Now, they didn't deny the visas officially, but they were like delayed. They didn't get them in time. They were prevented from going. So it's pretty obnoxious. Now, I did also get to ask a question to the Russian foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov. I actually asked him about the Black Sea grain deal because, at this point, Russia, it is trying to export grain. Russia exports a lot of grain, and they would like to export it. But there are all these crazy sanctions that have been imposed on Russia by the United States, and the USA keeps saying, "Oh yeah, we'll allow you to do it. We'll allow you to export the fertilizer. We'll allow you," and then they prevent it from happening. And so I asked the Russian foreign minister about it.
From RT. I'm asking, Russia has repeatedly pointed out that Ukraine is not fulfilling its obligations under the grain deal. And my question is, does Russia intend to withdraw from the deal, or is there a reason for staying if they're not going to fulfill their obligations?
Ну, не то, что Украина не выполняет своих обязательств. Украина не имеет отношения к той части сделки, которая касается российских удобрений, российского зерна. Эти части сделки блокируются западными санкциями. И именно для того, чтобы преодолеть эти санкции и снять препятствия на пути экспорта удобрений и зерна из России на мировые рынки, работает генеральный секретарь. Он подписался в этом меморандуме делать все возможное для того, чтобы этих целей достичь. Видимо, потребуется невозможное. Пока такого мы не наблюдаем. Ну а что касается перспектив сделки, я только что отвечал вашей коллеге. Действительно, Антонио Гутерреш вчера передал послание президенту Путину. Оно будет доложено, и о реакции будет сообщено.
So, yeah, I mean, the USA with its sanctions is basically preventing this deal from going through. You check the State Department website for country alerts. So there you go. There you go. That's what I've been up to lately. It's been taking up a lot of my time, but it's good, you know. And I was able to report from the UN, do some live hits, do some stories, ask some questions of officials. I was really happy to be able to raise the Uhuru case. You know, really happy to see what Jose Vega has been doing lately. That was awesome. Props to you, Jose Vega. You know, we just have to continue building a culture of resistance. Look, ousting Tucker Carlson, that shocks me. Folks, I don't know if you realize this, but Tucker Carlson has the most high or the highest ratings of any journalist, of any primetime TV program. So Fox News ousting him was not a business decision. It was a political one. And on so many issues, look, Tucker Carlson and I don't agree on many things. You know, we don't agree about capitalism. We don't believe, I'm not an American conservative. But, you know, when it came to Julian Assange, he talked about it. When it came to whether or not the USA should be sending billions of dollars in weapons to Ukraine, he talked about it. When it came even to the provocation on Taiwan, he talked about it. And he even most recently stuck up for the Uhuru movement. He did a segment about the indictments against them. And then after that, he raised it when he spoke at the Heritage Foundation. Of all places, he went to the right-wing Heritage Foundation and gave a speech talking. And in his speech, he reflected on how outrageous it was that they were indicted. And yeah, he says a lot of anti-China stuff on his show, a lot of anti-immigration stuff, and he's not politically where I'm at. But on many, many issues, he was the only mainstream media voice. The only mainstream media voice to talk about these issues. And he had Tulsi Gabbard on there, you know, and he was miles ahead of every other mainstream voice. The fact that he would dare talk about Assange, that he would dare question the war drive against Russia, that he would dare, you know, talk about January 6th and how things were staged. He had RFK Jr., very good point, Funky. He had RFK Jr. on his show, and his ousting was clearly a political move. It was clearly a political move. Very clearly political. And I got to tell you, the people on the internet right now, look, we have got to turn our back on internet communists. For real. For real. Because there are so many people saying things, oh, he wasn't a real anti-imperialist. Oh, they don't comprehend millions of people who never would have had a second thought, never would have questioned the USA sending billions of dollars to Ukraine, are questioning it because they saw that on Tucker. Millions of people who never would have thought about Julian Assange have thought about Julian Assange because they saw that on Tucker. They've listened to the Jimmy Dore's voice or Max Blumenthal's voice or Anya Parampil's voice because of that. Tucker Carlson going off the air, as wrong as he was on a number of issues, is a huge loss for those of us who are trying to stop World War III. It's a huge loss. And people that can't comprehend that, they're just like, oh, he wasn't a real anti-imperialist. I mean, I don't know what to say to you. I mean, you're out of touch on some level. You don't, I mean, it's this weird thing with all these people on the internet. We need to just turn our backs on them. Like, my patience for those people has just completely run out. They are wrong on every issue. Anything related to the real world and the real struggles going on, they get completely wrong. And they line up with the liberals. Right? The liberals are on one side. The liberals are trying to set up a low-wage police state. They are trying to wage relentless war and regime change operations against Russia and China and Venezuela and Iran and Cuba and all the countries that have broken out of their system. They are trying to drive down living standards and reduce the population and reduce consumption. That's what the liberals are trying to do. And they dress it up in this progressive, anti-racist, sexual freedom, LGBT. They dress it up in all this stuff. But at the end of the day, the liberals are trying to carry out an agenda that will make the world poorer and make American workers poorer and take away our civil liberties and beat back the forces of socialism and development in the world. That is what they are trying to do. And they're much better at doing it than conservatives are. Used to be the main current in the United States. Doing this was the neocons. It was the Bush people. And the liberals were the opposition back in, you had Michael Moore and others. That is no longer the case. Since the Obama years, there's been a renegotiation, a flip, and now it is the liberals, the woke social fascists. They are the main force carrying out the agenda of the imperialists. Now that could change. And I mean, it very soon could change, right? This Ron DeSantis stuff, the anti-woke Ron DeSantis stuff that's obsessed with China being the main enemy. That's, there's certainly on the conservative side a potential that they could flip it again. But right now, it appears that wokeism, imperialism with social justice characteristics, if you want to call it that, degrowth, imperialism, that is the main current among the imperialists. That's what they're promoting. And because conservatives are against it for a variety of reasons, and they're on the other side of the culture war, that puts them in a position where they're more open to hear views that are critical of the status quo, etc. I'm not a conservative. I mean, I might be a conservative in the cultural sense. I mean, am I really a conservative? Am I a conservative? That's a fair question. How am I a conservative, right? I get called a conservative all the time. How am I a conservative? I'm for gay marriage. I'm for abortion. I believe that anyone who wants to be transgender has the right to be transgender. I believe in the separation of church and state. We could never have a religious government in America. I am religious. I am a Christian, and I do believe Christianity has left a huge mark on this country. This is a Christian country, but we have a secular government. How am I a conservative? How am I a conservative? I mean, in my hometown, when I was a kid, being for gay marriage, being for abortion, believing in, God forbid, Darwinian evolution, that made me a far left liberal. People were horrified that I had these beliefs. But now these beliefs that I had when I was a kid in my small town in Ohio, my beliefs have, apparently people say I'm a cultural conservative, but I don't consider myself to be a conservative. I just consider myself to be not woke. I'm for gay marriage. I'm for abortion. I say anyone has the right to be transgender if they want to be. What you do with your body is your business. I will call you whatever pronouns you prefer. But that's not enough. That is not enough. Being a good woke, you have to hate Russia. That's a big part of being a woke. Anyone who likes Russia is a Nazi. You have to hate Russia. Being a good woke, you have to hate China. And anyone who likes China is a Nazi and deserves to be beaten up and killed on the street. I ain't a woke. I don't, how am I a conservative? I'm not a conservative, but I am apparently, because I'm not woke, I'm a conservative. I mean, it's weird. I guess I'm conservative in the sense that I believe in optimism. I believe in going out and working hard. I believe that right and wrong do exist. I do believe there is real truth in the world. But I don't think I'm a conservative. I'm just not woke. Oh, we need to drop the term woke. And that's the other thing. I just say woke. I identify this thing that I'm not. If I dare identify it, if I dare name it, that's another sign I must be a conservative. I don't get it. I am not a conservative in any conceivable way. But yet you're either with them or against them, right? There is an army of blue-haired, pink-haired people with piercings, and you're either with them or against them. And they want to jail anybody who supports Russia or China. They absolutely want to jail anybody who is asking questions about the trans issue and has issues around women's sports or kids on puberty blockers or whatever. If you ask one question, you should be jailed. You should be locked up. You know, I mean, you should support Facebook and Twitter censoring people and promoting some views and suppressing others. You should support the FBI because disagreeing with the FBI is a right-wing thing after January 6th. So you must be a conservative if you don't support the FBI. You know, I mean, there's this thing that they've created, which conservatives think is communism, which it ain't. It ain't communism, I'll tell you that much. It's not. You go to China, that ain't what they believe. You go to Vietnam, that is not what they believe in Vietnam. You go to Cuba, that is not what they believe in Cuba. You go to Venezuela, that is not what they believe. You go to Nicaragua, it is not what they believe. So do not tell me it's communism. It is not communism. This thing that we call woke, this thing, I don't know what you want to call it, whatever you want. It believes in degrowth, driving down living standards, that supports tech censorship, that supports regime change operations against independent countries, that supports silencing critics, that supports the FBI, that hates Julian Assange, and says it's okay for Julian Assange to be tortured and locked away because he's cringe, he's right-wing, he once tweeted something racist. I mean, I'm not with that. And because I'm not with that, I guess I must be a conservative. And that's the weird thing. I'm not a conservative in any conceivable way, but you're either with these folks or against them. Well, I'm against them. I mean, if you put it that way, I am against them. Right? These people are all or nothing. You're either with them or against them. And they are trying to set up a high-tech dark ages in the United States, and I'm not with them. And what these people are doing right now is really scary. Notice that none of the woke TV channels have done any stories about the Uhuru movement. Fox News covered it. Glenn Beck covered it. The Nation magazine covered it. But none of these so woke. Woke means you're supposed to be concerned about racial justice. Woke means you love the Black Panthers and you love Fred Hampton and stuff. But now we have a modern day group of Fred Hamptons, a modern day group of Black Panthers, Black socialists, who are facing criminal indictments, 10 years in prison. And mainstream media responds with crickets. And that should tell you what side they're on. They respond with crickets. Meanwhile, right-wing media, some parts of it, not all, some parts of right-wing media are mentioning it. Some parts of right-wing media are mentioning it because they realize that they are a target. They realize that it's them who's getting censored on Facebook. They realize that it's, them, conservatives and Trumpers who got arrested after January 6th. And they have the thought in their mind, if they do this to the Uhuru movement, they could do this to us. And it's not based on any commonality of belief. They just have that common sense because they're not the ruling party any longer. They are on the outs. And they realize that the ruling forces could start suppressing dissidents as they are doing, and they could be next. Just like the liberals used to be critical of McCarthyism. Now it's the conservatives that are critical of neo-McCarthyism. And this is a political realignment. And I wrote a whole book explaining where this was coming from. I wrote a whole book about this. And the book is quite popular. And Peter Coffin made a great video review of it for his YouTube channel. And it keeps getting good reviews. Good reviews keep pouring in on Amazon. My book, Where is America Going? Marxism, MAGA, and the Coming Revolution. It's selling pretty well. People are buying it and people are liking it. People are surprised by where it takes them. I am constantly doing more research. I am constantly digging into new concepts. And really, if you watch, this is like stream number 506 that we have done. We've done 506 streams. And the way I talked on my first stream, second stream, third stream is very different than I talk now, because it's been years, but we've developed politically, and we've talked a lot about concepts like Bonapartism, concepts like overproduction, concepts like the role of a vanguard party. And, you know, that book is really, I took 4 major concepts that we've talked about on these streams that needed to be fleshed out and written down, and I wrote them down. And that's what the book is. Where is America going? Marxism, MAGA, and the Coming Revolution. And people are liking it. And I went on Kim Iverson's show to talk about it, which was a great opportunity. And, you know, Peter Coffin did a review. Other reviews of it are in the works. I feel pretty good about it. So if you want to make any sense out of this crazy political atmosphere that we are in, I would encourage you to check out my book. I would encourage you to check it out. Yeah. And, you know, I guess, you know, I'm tired and I'm having kind of a stressful night. I guess we can just kind of go into the roll call at this point. I will call folks out as I see them, names and locations, and then I'll start answering your super chat questions. It may not be a long stream tonight. That's okay. Not every stream can be long. Sometimes we're on here for 3 hours. I did one stream that was 4 hours once. I'll never forget that. But this stream is, you know, might be shorter than usual. Maybe you guys will keep asking a lot of questions, but that's what I've got for you for my opening remarks for tonight. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell, and I will call you all out as I see you. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Who is with us? Names and locations. So we got David Rennie in Hamilton, Ontario. We got Joe from Los Angeles. We got Lawrence Johnson in Chicago. We got Zach Bunch from Richmond, Virginia. We got Tacoma, Washington. We got Tyler in Missouri. Get some sleep. Yeah, no shame in retiring early. Yeah, well, we'll see. You guys might ask a lot of questions. We got Temple City, California. Chris in Salt Lake City. Richmond, Virginia. Jamie in St. Paul. Noah in Boston. Che Guevara in New Mexico. Patch in Arizona. Rice from Adelaide, Australia. Bali, Indonesia. Mark Foster in Mission, Texas. Heidi in Edinburgh. Balthazar in Oakland. Jenny in Cincinnati. Killian in Milwaukee. Heidi in Edinburgh. Balthazar in Oakland. Bob Troy in New York. Very, very, very good. We got Ryan in Kansas City. We got Gavin in the Berg. All right. We got Briggy in Pennsylvania. Shout out to you, Briggy. We got Christian in Bergen County. We got Bay Area. Very, very good. So PSYOP is in the Bay Area. Palo Alto, California. Marty in Southampton. Jessica in Georgia. Deep in the heart of Georgia. We got Mariah in North Carolina. Late to the stream. Well, I was late too. It's that kind of night, man. Ferris Engel from Bromley, Kent, England. Colin in Greensboro. Charles in Zambia. Kami in Missouri. Matthew Walker. Missouri. What is it about Missouri? My dad is from Missouri, so maybe there's something about my voice, but a lot of Missouri folks like us. My dad's from Missouri. My grandfather was from Missouri. I went to go visit my grandfather in Missouri on many, many occasions. My grandfather was a very interesting man. You know, real big fan of baseball. He used to call me Slats when I was a kid. Hey, Slats. And I guess that was a famous baseball player from like the 1920s or something. I didn't know that, but that's apparently, he was really into baseball. All right. Rachel in Brooklyn. We got Europa Valley, California. We got Molly McGuire, Kami in Missouri. Bruce in Olympia. Maddie in California. Karl Marx at London Library. But there we go. All right, folks. So keep the super chats rolling in. I've got 3 of them here to answer. And I will answer them one by one as creatively and entertainingly as possible. And if you have more questions, shoot them my way. If not, this show may end soon, but we'll see. I mean, I'll try to keep it going for as long as I can. I'm here to answer your questions. And, who knows, in a mood like this where I'm a little tired and got a lot of things on my mind, a little tired and all that, who knows, I might give you answers that might surprise you. I'll try my best to surprise you with the answers. Who's to blame for store shelves in Cuba and the USSR? Empty store shelves in Cuba and the USSR. Okay, first thing that annoys me about that question. I know you're asking in good faith. I know it's a regular questioner who's asking that. He means well by asking the question, so I don't hold him against him. I don't hold it against him. But I know he's asking that question because that is something we've all been told all our whole lives. You see, I saw, there's a channel that's kind of makes fun of woke politics a little bit, Babylon B, and they have a couple of anti-communist sketches on their channel. And it's all about how, like, in communist countries, no one has any food. And it's like, you really think that? You really think that, for the 70 years the Soviet Union existed, no one ever had any food? There was just no food the whole time. They were all, what do they call that? The people who don't eat. They call them, they claim they can not eat they call them breatharians. Someone told me about this. This was a thing. It was like a myth of people who claimed they could survive without food. They were breatharians. I guess in the Soviet Union, they were all breatharians, right? Yeah, they were breatharians. Here, I'll drop in the Wikipedia. They were all breatharians in the Soviet Union because no one ever had any food, because in communism, you can just never have any food, because, it just doesn't exist, no, no, I mean, I've heard this my whole life. No one in the Soviet Union ever had anything. They were all poor. So there you go. Great stream with Lori RFK Spencer. Thank you. And we'll talk about that. They were all just completely poor in the Soviet Union. They never had anything ever. I mean, there was just no food. Everyone just starved and died the whole time, was absolutely miserable and suffering. That's just what communism does. How about the fact that it was due to the communists that the Soviet Union became fully industrialized and electrified? They wiped out illiteracy. They built the world's largest steel mills. They built the world's largest power plants. There was starvation all the time. They actually built the modern agricultural system of Russia. They brought tractors to the countryside, the iron oxen, right? Good question. And I mean, the living standards, the life expectancy of the population increased because of the Soviet Union. I mean, it was really, really dramatic. All the big changes that happened because of the Soviet Union. And were there times where they could not get consumer goods? Yeah. I mean, for example, I know it was very hard to get bananas, because of the embargoes, right, from the United States. It was very hard to get bananas. Now one could get oranges because they grow oranges in the southern USSR, citrus fruit, lemons, oranges, limes, things like that. They, those grew in the southern USSR, so you could get those. But there was a full-on blockade. There were a lot of things they could not get in the Eastern Bloc, like Coca-Cola. Right? In most parts of the world, you can get Coca-Cola. You couldn't get it in the former USSR. There was a blockade. There was a blockade imposed on these countries. And because of that, because of this blockade that was imposed, it was hard to get certain consumer goods they did not produce domestically. And Cuba faces a similar problem. I mean, the blockade of Cuba is very similar. In Cuba, things that we take for granted in the West, like plastic bags, are hard to get. They're hard to get because of the fact that there's a blockade. And, a plastic bag, you have to have oil to make a plastic bag. I bet you didn't know that. There's petroleum in plastic bags. Well, in Cuba, their oil supply is limited. So they don't make you take their petroleum and use it on a plastic bag. So, capitalist perestroika led to the first food shortages in the USSR since 1933. Besides World War II, perestroika caused many other goods shortages. Well, perestroika was an attempt to adjust their economy to be more of a market system. And the Soviet Union was not in a position to change their system, and it caused all kinds of problems. But that said, there were a lot of consumer goods that you could not get in the Soviet Union because of the blockade that was imposed on them. And that is a fact, and the same for Cuba, right? While they overall raised the living standards, in Cuba, living conditions have vastly increased. It's true that the blockades prevented them from getting a lot of consumer goods. That is true. And the answer to that, of course, is to lift those blockades and allow them to do business on the international market. Cuba has a huge amount of sugar, but they can't export it to any country aligned with the United States. Well, if that was restricted and they could export their sugar and they could bring in the revenue from doing that, then and there was not a restriction on American companies exporting to them, they would have those kind of consumer goods. And, this is some of the problems that socialism in one country has, right? When you're building socialism in a sea of capitalism, it's very difficult. And honestly, most communist governments around the world would like to be more like the Chinese model, where they have a market sector, where they court foreign investment, while at the same time controlling the market with a state central plan. Please do a stream on the divisions and rivalries in the ruling class. The historical details on different families and motivations are fascinating. Please do a stream on the differences in the ruling class. Differences are fascinating. Very good. Very good. And that in the 20th century, that was one of the traps that I think the communist governments of the world fell into. And they fell into the trap of thinking, okay, we're isolated. We're blocked out of the world economy, but we can build up our own industries, which they did very well. We can electrify, we can industrialize, we can bring in modern education, we can redistribute the land, we can create a modern agricultural system. And all the communist governments around the world generally did that. And so did the BAF countries, so did Libya. Socialist countries, they very effectively built up their industries. They electrified, they built modern education systems, modern medical and healthcare systems. That was one thing they could do, but they fell into the trap of saying, we can do that. And even though we're still going to be locked out of the global market for consumer goods, and even though we're still, we'll have industrialized, but we'll still be in a low state of development, we're going to be purely egalitarian. We're going to make the Soviet Union or China or Cambodia or wherever, we're going to make it purely egalitarian. And that myth that you can try to build a totally egalitarian society in poverty, that didn't work out too well. Because if you look at the data, Che Guevara, he was a very heroic individual. He fought against the imperialists. He was from a wealthy Argentine family, but he became a communist. He became a doctor and a communist. He went in Guatemala and was working with the government of Jacobo Arbenz. And then when there was a coup against it, he quit the Communist Party. And then he met Fidel Castro in Mexico, and he went to Cuba, and he became an important leader of the Cuban Revolution. And then, we know what eventually happened. He went to Bolivia, and he was killed in Bolivia. He went to the Congo, and he fought in Africa in an anti-colonial struggle. And then Che Guevara was a very heroic individual. However, his economic policies in Cuba were not very successful. When he was running Cuba's economic policies during the early 1960s in Cuba, they weren't very successful because he argued that you didn't have to have material incentives. If you read his essays, Socialism and Man in Cuba, The New Socialist Man, he was arguing that people would work just out of the goodness, out of their motivation. And it didn't work out too well. And he left Cuba, and Fidel moved toward more of the Stalinist, quote unquote, model. And, in the Soviet Union, the way they motivated people to work was that people who worked harder got rewarded. They had a program they called Stakhanovism. I'm probably mispronouncing that, but if you worked the hardest, if you were in a factory that made hats, if you made the most hats, you got a big award. And Fidel would come to or Stalin would come to the factory and shake your hand and give you kind of a reward for working hard. Well, that's how most socialist countries were. That's part of the Stalin model, is you have state-run industries, but in Cuba they call it emulation, where they honor the high-achieving individuals. Che Guevara was against that. He thought people should just work hard for the good of the country. He wanted to create a spirit of selflessness. And during the Cultural Revolution in China, they were against that kind of thing. Pol Pot was against that kind of thing. Well, you need that kind of thing, right? And, the idea that people should work just selflessly, that works in a huge state of abundance. When people just work because they feel like it, you can do stuff like that in a state of abundance, when people are just working because they want to entertain themselves. However, when you have an economy of scarcity, where there's only so much to go around, you have to motivate people to work. And it's a little bit different. And that the goal of communism is to build a society based on vast abundance, right? Is to raise up the productivity of society, the wealth of society, so much that inequality can be uprooted, and that all forms of social hierarchy can be uprooted, and that we can have equality. That's what the goal is. That's what the goal is. However, if you try to create social relations of total egalitarianism in a state of scarcity, it's a recipe for disaster. And the Cultural Revolution in China was a great example of that. They tried to enter the early stages of communism when China was still deeply impoverished, and it didn't work out very well. Pol Pot in Cambodia, he tried to create a totally full communist society without even industrializing, on the basis of an agrarian economy. It did not work out very well. The basis of breaking down inequality is abundance. Scarcity is the source of social hierarchies. This is what Marx makes clear in Critique of the Goethe Program, and this is what we've learned over the course of the Cold War. And it's a really important point. We've learned this over the course of the Cold War, and it must be understood, and that you cannot build a fully egalitarian society in poverty. And the basis of breaking down inequality is abundance. When there's enough for everybody, that's what Marx wrote about in Critique of the Goethe Program. Labor becomes life's prime want and no longer a necessity. So there you go. That's kind of my response to that. Somebody said that I support the evil cult, Uhuru, and Black Hammer. This is classic. I don't know who this person is. They said some name I've never heard before. I pay attention to things, so I assume this is somebody who's been making videos criticizing me. But I don't know, honestly. Look, anybody at this moment, when 4 people, Penny Hess, is that her last name? Jesse Neville, Chairman O'Malley, and Ghazi Kudzo, these people could go to prison for a decade. And the charge against them is that they had a Zoom call. The charge against them is that they made statements about Ukraine, about the Nazis in Ukraine, that they supported Russia, that they talked with a Russian guy. And if you can't comprehend how dangerous this is, and you're caught up in, like he says, they're evil cults, who cares? First of all, I don't buy that. I've seen how the Uhuru people operate. I've never had any interactions with the other organization you mentioned, but the Uhuru people, they don't seem like a cult to me. They seem like a group of people. They have their beliefs. Chairman O'Malley, the African People's Socialist Party, the White Supporters Organization. I mean, they don't strike me, but I mean, I don't think cult is a real thing anyway. And that's a whole nother conversation. It's not really relevant. But it's like, right, whatever your grievance with them is, right? I don't agree with them about the nature of the white working class versus the black working class. Some of their formulations around who is oppressed and who the exploiters are and the way they view the white working class, I don't agree with, but that doesn't matter because they're under attack by the government. And people who can't comprehend that are completely worthless right now, right? Look, these people could believe completely different things than me, right? I would still support them because the way they're being targeted right now, these federal charges are so serious, They could lock up anybody. Based on this, they could lock up anybody who is speaking up and saying the kind of things I say, things Jimmy Dore says, Kim Iverson says. They could jail all of us. And if you can't comprehend that, you're just so caught up in, a bunch of cancel culture rumors you read on the internet about, they are, sexual this or they this or they're that. I mean, it's like, it's beyond me. It's really, really beyond me. Before the USA invaded Iraq, they put all kinds of documentaries on television. I remember this, accusing Saddam Hussein of all kinds of things. I'm sure some of that was true. Saddam Hussein was the leader of Iraq. He was vicious to the Iranians, murdered many Iranians when he attacked Iran. And Saddam Hussein was up against rival factions of the Ba'athist Party. He was up against Shiite uprisings. He was up against Kurdish separatists. And I'm sure that Saddam Hussein's people were very vicious and brutal to rival factions in Iraq and to the Iranians. And so, in order to convince us that the USA invading Iraq was a good thing, they showed us all kinds of documentaries. I'm sure some of that stuff was lies or rumors or exaggerations, but some of it was probably true, right? I mean, what was the one thing they claimed is that Saddam Hussein threw people into wood chippers. That's one thing. They said Saddam Hussein threw people into wood chippers. Did that happen? I don't know. I don't care if it happened or not. Because what happened when the USA invaded Iraq? Hundreds of thousands of people died who never should have died. All of that noise they made about Saddam Hussein was to convince us that a crime against the Iraqi people was somehow okay. And that's what all these fucking idiots on the internet who talk shit don't understand. All right? Maybe Saddam Hussein threw somebody into a wood chipper. But by showing that on TV right before the invasion of Iraq, you were helping psych up the American people to support destroying a country. Okay? Like, that's what you were doing. Maybe it was true, maybe it wasn't. But that didn't make it okay for the United States to do what they do. But whenever the American government attacks a country with sanctions, regime change operations, or invasions, whenever they do that, they always build up the case with all kinds of negative propaganda about whoever they're targeting, no matter who it is. The USA invaded Panama. So they told before the USA invaded Panama, they said, Noriega is a brutal blah, 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 blah. Was some of it true? Probably. Did that make it okay for the United States to invade Panama and overthrow the Panamanian government? No. And these people, they don't get it. They don't get it. The Nazis, before they put Jews into gas chambers, do you think that one day they just said, hey, guys, these Jews, they've never done anything wrong, and we're just going to take them and put them in the gas chambers? Why? Because we're bad people. We're not moral. No. They had a guy named Julius Streicher. Google Julius Streicher. What did Julius Streicher do? Julius Streicher made children's books for German children to convince them that Jews were bad people. He made propaganda films for people to watch that said Jews were evil and deserved to be killed. Julius Streicher psyched up the German people in order to carry out the Holocaust, probably the greatest crime against humanity. Whenever mass murdering oppressive institutions are targeting somebody, they always fill the air with all kinds of propaganda in order to convince you that what they're doing is somehow okay. You know, the slavery. Do you think that the slave traders, they said, oh, we are going to Africa to enslave these people and drag them back to the United States because we want to make more profits off of them because we're cruel, sadistic people? No. They said, oh, we're giving them a chance at Christianity. We're taking the black people to America so we can save their souls and win them to Jesus. And they're going to see how we civilized white people live, and they're going to learn from it. We're helping these black people to not be savages. We're helping to civilize them. That's what they said. They were lying. Slavery was done in order to enrich themselves. It was a brutal crime against humanity. The transatlantic passage, what's that called? The Middle Passage. Millions of African people were killed. But they did it claiming they were doing something moral. And they put up all kinds of propaganda against black people in order to try and convince people that somehow it was okay to do what they're doing. And if right now you see 4 revolutionaries, 4 people that are dissidents in America, had their homes raided by the FBI, and are now facing 10 years in prison for things that they said and things that they thought in their brains and things that they communicated to the world in protests and webinars. If you see that and you go, oh yeah, but I heard there's this rumor or there was a cult and you're Julius Streicher. That's what you're doing. You're Julius Streicher. So if somebody clips this and wants to make great content and stops it and says, I said something I didn't say, which is what they always do. That's why you can't pay too much attention to these people. You really can't. But at this point, that's what most of the left are. The FBI targets somebody. They say, oh, well, they deserve it because, and I've seen this play out over and over again, right? Tucker Carlson just got removed from television. The most popular radio host in the United States got removed from television, not because of his stance on immigration, not because of his stance on police brutality, not because of his stance on Donald Trump, but because of his stance on Russia and Ukraine. And there's a crew of blah, 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 blah people who are like, that's okay because he's racist. That's okay. And they just blah, 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 they find a way that it's okay. It's okay somehow because he's a bad person, because it's like they don't get it. You're allowed to be a bad person on TV. You're not allowed to be anti-imperialist. Rage Against the War Machine happens. For the first time, we have libertarians, socialists, Dennis Kucinich, Jimmy Dore, Tara Reid, Kim Iverson, Tulsi Gabbard, gathering together. This is the biggest anti-war rally that happens. 13,000 people gather in Washington, D.C. to say we don't want a war. And the mainstream media goes all out telling people don't do it, right? Oh, don't go to the rally. They're racist. They're sexist. They're Nazis. They're Russian propagandists. And then there's a group of leftists who go, oh, yeah, well, I'm against the war, but I would never march with these people because... And there's these people that they just don't get it, right? The Move House bombing. You remember the Move House bombing? John Africa, the leader of the Move organization. They called them a cult too. Maybe they were. I don't know enough about it. I mean, I've met Ramona Africa. I've met Pam Africa. They don't seem like a cult to me. They seem like nice people. They seem, they have some beliefs I don't agree with. I'm not a vegetarian. I'm not a primitivist, but you know, but before they bombed the house, the Move House in Philadelphia, they did all kinds of things. Oh, John Africa's a bad person. He's got guns. He blah, 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 blah. And they don't take out their garbage and there's cockroaches and blah, blah, blah. They always do this. And there is nothing I hate more than people who claim to be revolutionary. People who claim to be so revolutionary until there's actually a moment where the state, where the ruling class and the imperialists are targeting a country or a person or a group, and then suddenly they tap dance and find a way to side with the imperialists. Those kind of people are garbage. I hate them, right? They love to be communists when they're reading a history book. They love to be communists when they're talking to their friends. But the second they actually have to show any fucking courage, all of a sudden, they're on the same side as the police. They're on the same side as the FBI. They're on the same side as the mainstream media. They like communism in a vague sense. Communism is a great idea as long as they don't have to actually have any courage. As long as they can still be an intellectual conformist. As long as it's just a vague intellectual concept, it's fine. But the second they have to stick up for a group of black people that are facing imprisonment, oh no, they're on the side of the FBI. The second they have to stand up for Iraq against the U.S. imperialists, oh no, they're on the side of the U.S. imperialists. The second they have to say that what we're being told about China isn't true, oh no, they find a way to support the mainstream media lying about China. I cannot stand those people. I cannot stand them. They are bad people. They are bad people. They disgrace the name of communism. They absolutely, I cannot stand it. If you do that, it's like the worst trick in the world. It is like the worst trick in the world, right? Is they performatively, they love the aesthetic of revolution. They love the intellectual head games of revolution. But if there's actually a real struggle that's breaking out, they find a way to be on the side of the imperialists. And I cannot stand it. And if that's what you're doing right now, if you're going around talking about Huru and Hammer or a cult, look, Uhuru I have interacted with. I've never met anyone from Black Hammer. And to be fair, okay, the indictment, the federal government indictment, that's thought crime. They haven't done anything. The local charges in Georgia, I don't know about that. They are charged with actual crimes. They may not be guilty of those actual crimes. I don't know. And literally the night they had been raided, I made a video. That very night they had been raided, I made a video. And I just said, maybe we shouldn't celebrate because we don't have all the facts yet. Maybe we shouldn't celebrate them being raided. Right? And that was like the night they had been raided. Nobody had any of the facts yet. I heard some of this. I pulled this from there. Nobody had any of the facts, but I saw all these scum on Twitter saying that it was okay for the government to arrest them, cheering on government repression against a group of black activists that take anti-imperialist stances because of Twitter gossip. And I just said that's wrong. And I stand by my position. It is wrong. It is absolutely wrong. I will not support the U.S. government raiding the homes of black activists because of Twitter gossip. I won't, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? Do I know about these actual crimes Black Hammer is accused of? I don't know the details there. I just don't know, okay? I honestly don't give a fuck at this point, right? Well, I'm worried about the federal charges against the Uhuru movement and one of the Black Hammer people. They're being charged for thought crimes, and you have to stand against that. And all that other stuff is just noise. And honestly, the individual you asked me about, I don't know who that is. If that is the person that I'm thinking it is, which it may not be, right? I don't pay that much attention. Honestly, there is one individual who's been making videos. I've seen clips here and there. I think this guy is honestly intellectually disabled. He doesn't comprehend the points that I'm making or that other people make. He says really dumb things. Like in one of his videos, he said that PSL are cops because they get permits for protests. And it's like, I think this guy may actually genuinely be intellectually disabled. So I'm not going to get into a fight with him. If this is the person I think it is, which it may not be. So please, if this is the wrong person, please don't, this guy may be genuinely intellectually disabled. So, but behind his videos, if you watch the stuff he's saying, amid all his videos, he's got some kind of personal beef, I think, with Black Hammer. Right? And I don't know what that's about. I don't know. I have no idea. I've never interacted with the group. And honestly, I like I've said before, I don't know about these charges in Georgia that are actual crimes they're accused of. I don't know about that. What I do know about is the federal charges, which are bullshit and everyone's got to stand up against. But this guy, I mean, he does these videos and I watch it and it's you've got a personal beef. That's what I'm seeing there. You've got a personal beef. Dude, this is bigger than your personal beef. This is so much bigger than your personal beef. And if you think this is about your personal beef, I mean, if you can't comprehend that the U.S. government jailing people, calling them pro-Russian agents, isn't okay because of your personal experience, somebody was mean to you or you joined a group and they treated you wrong. Look, I've been in groups and they treated me wrong. I've had bad experiences, but I don't support the government arresting these people. And if you can't comprehend that, I pity you, right? I've had bad experiences with groups. And maybe your experiences have been 10 times worse than mine. But that doesn't make it okay for the government to start jailing people for having dissident views. Jackson Hinkle has said a lot of nasty shit about me. And I did not speak at Rage Against the War Machine, even though we were official sponsors of Rage Against the War Machine. And our logo was on every single leaflet. And we were one of the main promoters and we had a special reception afterwards. They didn't let me speak at the rally. And you know who they did let speak? They let Jackson Hinkle speak. And Jackson Hinkle has talked a lot of shit about me and said stuff that's nasty and rude and doesn't even fit. Okay? But I still supported Rage Against the War Machine. Why? Because it was the right thing to do. It wasn't about my personal beef. Right? It wasn't about my personal beef. Jackson Hinkle's an asshole. I should have been invited to be a speaker on the stage. I wasn't. You know what? And I could have fought with my good friend Nick Brana about it, but I let it go because I said it's bigger than me. It's not just about me. You got to be mature. You got to be mature. You have got to be mature. Got to be mature. You got to be mature about these things. And you just got to be mature. When they come for somebody, it's not about your personal beef. It's not about how badly they hurt you or how bad they hurt your feelings. It's not what it's about anymore, right? Rage Against the War Machine, I could see was important. And so I made the decision, it wasn't even a hard decision for me. I saw that rally happening where all the best people were going to be, and I thought we're going to support it. And Scott Ritter was kind of locked out of it. And so we found a way to support Scott Ritter and to have a great reception for Scott, that he could still be part of it. That's what we did, right? And this is what we need people to do, right? And, I have my personal beefs, and maybe there's been times I've been inappropriate with my personal beefs. Maybe there's been times where I've raised my personal beefs in ways I shouldn't have, or let them get in, cloud my judgment, get in the way of things. But I try to do better about that. People should try to do better about that. And when I watch this guy, he makes arguments that don't logically make sense. He doesn't use he doesn't speak very clearly, and I honestly think he may have some kind of intellectual disability or mental illness. If this is the person I'm thinking of, it may not be the same person. So I don't want to get into it, but when I listen to him, what I hear is this group hurt me. This group hurt me. And so therefore I support the FBI and going after them. Well, dude, you're being manipulated. You're being manipulated. And one thing I have noticed, and I wish people could notice this, I really wish people could notice this, is that everybody Name one person who is anti-imperialist, who hasn't been targeted with every smear and lie in the world. Name one. Name one person who supports Russia and Ukraine right now, that if you tweeted out you supported them on Twitter, you wouldn't get a bunch of people yelling at you and calling you a Nazi and explaining to you that that person was scum. Name one, right? Name one, right? Oh, I support Max Blumenthal. Oh, yeah? Well, Max Blumenthal's blah, 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 blah. Oh, I support Scott Ritter. Oh, yeah? Well, Scott Ritter's blah, 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 blah. I support Garland Nixon. Oh, Garland Nixon's blah, 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 blah. They do this to all of us. Now, it doesn't mean none of us have ever made mistakes, right? It doesn't mean that all these people are above criticism. They've never done anything wrong. Are some of the things these people say in their criticism based on fact or somehow true? Possibly. But that's not why it's being said, right? And I just don't understand why people can't get this through their heads, right? If you are opposed to the imperialists and you're effectively organizing, they will smear you. They will smear you. They will try to convince people that you're scum. And if you're not prepared to deal with that, you don't belong in this business. You don't belong in this world, honestly, because anybody who does the kind of stuff that I do with RT, with the Center for Political Innovation, they are going to hit you with everything they've got. And if you can't comprehend that might happen, if you want to, I swear, I don't get this, but there are certain people who have it in their heads. I do not get this. They have it in their heads that someday there's going to be a socialist revolution in some country. And the New York Times is going to go there and it's going to say, wow, I don't agree with their socialist revolution, but they've never violated human rights and they're purely democratic and they uphold civil liberties. So even though we don't agree with them, we're going to print positive articles about them in the New York Times, and we're not going to call them brutal dictators, and we're not going to call them authoritarians. There's people who think that way. It doesn't occur to them that the imperialists will lie about any socialist revolution. It doesn't occur. I mean, Venezuela, they bent over backwards to accommodate the imperialists. I've been to Venezuela. They have ads for the opposition on television. Venezuela doesn't have the death penalty. They let the prisoners vote. Did you know this? People in Venezuela who've been arrested, they have voting booths in the jail cells. So these people that are opposition, that are trying to violently overthrow the Venezuelan government, they get arrested. They take them to the jail, and then they have a special voting booth in the jail so these people can still vote. They don't have the death penalty, but yet somehow mainstream media says Maduro is a brutal dictator. How's he a brutal dictator? No death penalty. He lets the people in jail vote, right? The opposition's on TV. It's like they bend over backwards to accommodate them, but it's still a brutal dictatorship as far as you're concerned. They will do this to anybody. They will do this to anybody. They will do this to anybody. And do they sometimes point to true things? Sure. Do they take things that are true and exaggerate them? Sure. Do they sometimes point to real flaws that people have, real mistakes they've made, real attributes of their character that are, not redeeming? Sure. But is that the issue? No. And it's like, I want to shake these people, because what it is, it's this extreme selfishness. I mean, it in some cases it's extreme selfishness, and in other cases it's just ignorant. It's just naivete, ignorance. But in what it looks like in this person that you mentioned, in his case, it's just extreme selfishness. He's mad about his own shit. And maybe he's absolutely right in being mad about it. Maybe, Uhuru and Black Hammer have fucked this guy. Maybe they have. I don't know. I kind of doubt it, but it's possible. But does that make it okay for the government to jail people on these grounds? No. And if he can't comprehend that, I don't know what, it's extreme selfishness, right? Whatever they did to him, right or wrong or whatever, has nothing to do with the Department of Justice going after them. They are not going after them. The U.S. Department of Justice is not going after Uhuru and Black Hammer because of whatever this guy is mad about. They are going after them because they are allegedly tied to Russia and they're making anti-imperialist statements. That's why they're going after them. You can't comprehend that. You can't separate your own bad experience or your own bitterness. You're just an extremely selfish person. Some of these people are just naive. They just don't understand. They haven't seen it. But, you know, and I mean, people that I've dealt with, right? I mean, you know, I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes. I've admitted that I've made mistakes. However, there are people who have taken things that I have done and blown them up into things that they are not, right? And I've pointed this out many times. No one has ever accused me of 90% of the things I read about myself on the internet of. I have been called a rapist. I have been called a pedophile. I've been called a sexual assault person. No one has ever accused me of any of that. But these people say it, right? They took a small thing where I used poor judgment and they blew it up into something it absolutely was not, you know? And there are all these people who cannot wrap their minds around that. They cannot comprehend that I could have made a mistake, but it's not what these people are saying. And these people aren't saying it because they're just so concerned about me and my bad side or whatever. They're saying it because I'm anti-imperialist. And if people can't comprehend that yes, I'm fallible. Yes, I'm a human. I make mistakes. But I certainly haven't made the mistakes people are saying I made. And in fact, I've never been accused of the things they accuse me of saying. And the people that are saying it aren't saying it because they really care about this. They're saying it because of who I am, right? And people that can't understand that, I don't know what to say to them. I have never been accused of sexual assault. I have never been accused of being a pedophile or anything involving a minor. I have never been accused of rape. I have never been accused of anything. I mean, if you really look at the details, I have never been accused of, I've been accused of almost nothing. But all kinds of people declare all kinds of false things about me. And if you can't comprehend that has a lot more to do with my politics than it has to do with anything I've ever done, you know, I don't know what to say to you. I don't know what to say to you. I mean, and there are just some people. Oh, I missed a super chat. I missed a super chat. Let me just scroll up. There are some people that just cannot wrap their minds around it. Right? Wow. Where's this super chat I missed? Scrolling up. I do not see this super chat. Oh, wow. That was really far up there. No one is talking about Biden submitting the War Powers Resolution to go into Djibouti, Ethiopia, and Sudan. War Powers Resolution. Biden to go into Ethiopia. Sudan, Djibouti. All right. So there you go. So there you go. I mean, I don't know what more to say about it. And, you know, I mean, some people are just not cut out for this. They can't get over their own petty personal shit. I mean, some of this stuff, well, anyway, I could ramble about this topic all night. But you asked me about somebody claims that Uhuru and Black Hammer are evil cults. You know, what if they were? What if they were? I would still support them because of the circumstances. And if you can't comprehend that, you know, and I mean, I'll be amused at how this is reinterpreted, you know. There you go. And I'm sure there'll be some reinterpretation of what I said here or something. I mean, it's unbelievable. And it's like these people, they just cannot intellectually conceive of like, oh, it's not because of like, they can't conceive of this. You know, I'm watching somebody, I'm explaining that David Koresh, the guy at Waco, was a bad guy, exploited members of his group, was not a good person. But the U.S. government used that to horrendously firebomb the place, you know, and they played up some of the bad things about David Koresh, and they used that to justify a horrendous bombing. And like, he can't understand that I'm explaining. He can't understand that point. Like, no comprendo. It's like, he just can't comprehend that, like, sometimes the imperialists, in order to justify their crimes, say true things or say false things and build a case for it. And if you're trying to stop the imperialists from doing these bad things, it does not help at that very moment to echo those bad, like, they can't comprehend that, you know? I'm trying to think of an example. You know, say the police are about to storm into your neighbor's apartment. No, that's a bad. Yeah, okay. Say the police are about to storm into your neighbor's apartment. Your neighbor's a bad person. Your neighbor, they're going to murder your neighbor. And there's a standoff going on. Your neighbor's in his. This is a bad example, right? Trying to think of an example. Okay, let's say that your neighbor is on trial for a crime he didn't commit. Your neighbor is accused of killing his wife, right? Your neighbor is accused of killing his wife, and you know he didn't do it. You know he didn't do it. And he's on trial for killing his wife, a crime he didn't commit. But he didn't kill his wife, but he cheated on her. At that moment, when your neighbor is on trial for murder for killing his wife, and you know for a fact he didn't do it, would it be strategic for you to stand outside the courtroom with the bullhorn and shout, "He cheated on his wife! He cheated on his wife! He's a nasty adulterer! He's a nasty cheater! He cheated on his wife!" Would that be helpful? Would that be the right thing to do? But it's true. He cheated on his wife. He cheated on his wife. It's true. It's true. He's a nasty adulterer. Okay. But you do realize he's on trial now for a crime he didn't commit. Yeah, but I'm mad at him because he's cheating on his wife. He cheated on his wife. Everyone know that guy in there that's on trial. He cheated on his wife. It's like, you do realize they're trying to imprison him for murdering his wife. You know he didn't murder his wife. Yeah, but it's like your personal shit is not the issue, right? That's kind of the analogy I'm using, right? It's a good analogy. It's a helpful analogy. I can probably think of better analogies at some point, but it's just like, you know, you have to figure out what the primary contradiction is at the time. That's a good way of putting it. Is the primary contradiction the organizational practices of Uhuru and Black Hammer, or is the primary contradiction the FBI trying to suppress dissident organizations? Which one is it? What is this about? Are the charges on Uhuru and Black Hammer, are the charges about their organizational practices or about their international stances, right? And if you just start choosing this moment of all moments to just raise, to just raise the alarm, what are you doing? Who are you helping, right? You should be able to say, I don't agree with these people. I have questions about these people, but they're innocent and I'm going to do everything I can. And you shouldn't be helping build a case against them, So, I mean, if you can't comprehend this, I'm trying my hardest to put this in language people can understand, but there are some people that are just so stupid they can't understand this, right? I mean, people that think like, PSL are cops because they like get permits, man. They're cops. I mean, that sounds like an intellectual disability to me. They're the police. The police are, people in uniform who give tickets and arrest people and such. And permits are these things that you go and apply for so that you can have sound and you can set up a stage and it's legal. So as much as I don't like PSL, them getting permits does not make them cops. All right. And anyone who would make a video claiming that PSL are cops because they get permits, I mean, they probably didn't understand a single word I said. And the sad thing is, a lot of these people are, I mean, they're being manipulated, right? Jason Unruhe, you know, I mean, look at that guy. Has he ever understood a single argument I've made? And it's like, it's so obvious that as soon as I do anything, a bunch of people go to him, and there's probably Patreon money involved, and some Patreon money shows up. He has said so many things about me that are so ridiculously false. I mean, he claimed that my introduction to socialism, utopian, and scientific advocated for manifest destiny. Like, there's no discussion of that topic in there. You know, I mean, it's just like these people send him Patreon money and tell him stuff, and he just runs with it. And it's so sad. But anyway, a lot of the people hating on Tucker are because they think the establishment is one big hive mind. They don't understand divisions in the ruling class. That's a good point. All righty. Have you checked the State Department website for country alerts? Every country the U.S. today doesn't like has 2 to 5 star. I absolutely, and yeah, they use those alerts about the safety of travelers. They use them in a very political way. They tell you not to go to Iran and not to go to Nicaragua, and it's, again, the naivete of people. You know, I went to Nicaragua with somebody, and you know, I mean, it's just like there were other people. It's like, oh, I can't go there. You know, look at the State Department website. It's like you're going there as a guest of the government. I mean, it's like, you know, there's just so many examples of this where it's like people, they don't understand. They just don't understand. You know, they really don't get it. Some people just aren't cut out for this. Some people just, you know, in order to do this kind of work, you have to be willing to take some risks, and you have to be willing to kind of break with the mindset. And you know, some people just can't comprehend, you know, yeah, you know, yes, they try to deter people from traveling to countries they don't like. That is true, right? They make it very hard to travel to countries you don't like. They put sanctions on countries they don't like. And yes, they politicize those warnings. Yes, those warnings are very politicized, you know. Someone said, great stream with Lori. Yeah, that was great. I had a great opportunity on Sunday evening on with Lori on Maverick News, talk about RFK, and she's doing a lot of stuff around the RFK case. Shout out to you, Lori, if you're watching. Great stuff. Great stuff. All right. Was Twitter files the result of a division in the ruling class? I think so. It's also probably a result of the fact that it's probably a result of the fact that everybody knew that stuff was going on. And sometimes it's better to admit it. You know, they use the term limited hangout. That's a term that comes out of the Watergate scandal, where they would do a lot of things and they acknowledge some of them as like damage control. And it's like there was so much manipulation of social media going on, so much lying, etc. They had to acknowledge it somehow. They had to validate it. They're going to lose. What's really going on is they're going to lose their monopoly. Right? That's why they're freaking out about TikTok so much. They're going to lose their monopoly. It's only a matter of time before Twitter and Facebook don't have a monopoly any longer. They're terrified of what that's going to mean. Because, you know, Mark Zuckerberg, to his credit, has held off. He hasn't done half as much censorship as they've wanted him to do. But you can't delay the inevitable. You know, first the Catholic Church had the printing press. Pretty soon, critics of the Catholic Church had it. You know, you can't roll back history, and it's only a matter of time. Only a matter of time before people are getting their social media from a lot of different sources, and that's what they're really afraid of. All right. Please do a stream on the differences in the ruling class. Historical differences are fascinating. I will do another stream like that soon. That's a topic we talk a lot about. Thoughts on AOC's deplatforming works. It's like, what is important to AOC? Black revolutionaries arrested by the federal government? No. Stopping World War III? No. What is important to AOC? I mean, what is important? I mean, she blames Tucker Carlson for a lot of the violent threats that she's been subjected to. I mean, has Tucker Carlson ever threatened her on the air? That would be a serious crime if he had. I don't think he has. Threatening an elected official on the air is a crime. People watching Tucker Carlson getting mad at her, that's different. That's a very different thing. But, you know, the fact that AOC, like, can't comprehend, I mean, AOC has just been such a disappointment. I mean, can I think of one good stand she's taken on anything at this point? Can you think of one good thing that she has ever done? You know, I mean, one anti-imperialist position, one, I can't, you know, but, you know, I mean, her feeling, I guess, in the tweet, she's glad Tucker's gone because a lot of people watched Tucker and based on what he said about her, got angry and threatened her. Well, that's not Tucker's fault, right? Not Tucker's fault. And Tucker was more anti-war than she was, and more anti-political repression than she was, more pro-Julian Assange than she was. So, yeah, I'm not too impressed. The war powers resolution for Biden in Ethiopia. Well, Djibouti hosts a Chinese base. The Horn of Africa is very much, you know, that's a place that is contested. You know, China has a lot of influence there. Ethiopia, the USA has been trying to scramble for control of Ethiopia for a long time. And Biden moving into there, I believe it. All right. Is there such thing as peak oil? Well, of course. I mean, in theory, I mean, it may not come for a really long time, but it may not come for a really long time, but I mean, such a thing could exist. In theory, we could run out of oil, right? I mean, we would have run out of oil already if our way of extracting oil was limited to what we had in the 1970s. The peak oil predictions, they come out of this book called The Limits to Growth. It was published by the Club of Rome. They predicted that the USA or the world would run out of oil by like the mid 80s. And they would be right if our methods of extracting oil had not changed since then. However, they have, right? Deep sea drilling, fracking. There are other methods, right? But in theory, I mean, look, I mean, if there's only so much oil, we could run out. We got a long way to go before that. Like, you know, Scotland, I mean, the natural gas and the oil of Scotland, they got about 70 years there, you know, but we need to get beyond fossil fuels. Fossil fuels are great. I'm not saying we need to, you know, completely, you know, degrow, but I'm saying we need to get to a higher source. We need fusion energy. They're not going to last forever, right? They're not going to last forever. So there you go. All right, next question. Establishment is not one big hive mind, divisions in the ruling class. Yeah, that's one problem with a lot of Marxists. There's a lot of people, when they first get into Marxism, they think of the ruling class as the Illuminati. Like they're sitting up there in their council, like plotting everything. Well, there are factions within the ruling class, and there are conspiracies within the ruling class, but capitalism is not a conspiracy. Capitalism is not a conspiracy. You know, there are capitalists who do conspire, but capitalism itself, I mean, and there are divisions among the elite. Some of them want one thing, some of them want another thing. And that's a really important thing to think about. And there is no faction that really has all the power, because if they did, things would be a lot more stable, right? If there's one group that could just decide to make the economy be good, they would, right? You know, the when it really gets down to it, the ruling class, even they don't really have control because of the chaos of the market, the anarchy of production. They are scrambling to try and maintain that control. But the only way they can gain control is they have to suppress other capitalists. And that's what Bonapartism is about. Bonapartism is that in order to use the state to try and stabilize capitalism, some capitalists have to be heavily suppressed and lose out. Other capitalists will gain from that. But the ruling class, the idea that they're all in the same team, they're all in the same boat, there's like a secret ruling class Illuminati that they're all in, that's not correct. There is no they, right? There are financial interests that sometimes overlap, and that's what you need to understand. All right, folks, what is the Sierra Club? It's an environmentalist group, and they're aligned with the Democratic Party. The World Wildlife Federation tends to be a little more Republican. Sierra Club tends to be Democrats. That's my understanding, if I'm not mistaken. World Wildlife Federation tend to be more Republican. Sierra Club can tend to be Democrats. All right. On that note, folks, I'm going to say goodnight. I'm a bit tired, and like I said, dealing with a little bit of a stressful situation with a friend, but hopefully it'll all get worked out. And I'll probably be back tomorrow night. Someone liked my reaction to Jordan Peterson's communism video. Oh yeah, I do loads of response videos. Yeah, and if there's ever anything you want me to do a response to, send it to me, right? That Jordan Peterson response video was one of the smartest videos I did. So by all means, I love doing those kind of videos. They're so easy to do, right? Because I just say what I would say, So yeah, if there's ever some kind of video you want me to debunk or do a response to, send it my way. I'm really glad you liked it, LK. Really glad to hear that. I'm going to put up the closing music now. Got to say goodnight.
The American century.
Oh, wrong one. Wrong video. That's how tired I am, folks. That's how tired I am. Okay. New upsurge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. And while the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today.